with my friend Matthew Bartlett. We are going to hash out this Texas primary situation. We've got this Senate seat up for grabs, and it's going a little different than I think a lot of people expected as of last week. So we're going to hash out the details on this one and just talk about where we're headed. The Republican primary here, we had Cornyn, who is the incumbent senator. He's our old guard candidate. Pretty typical conservative pre-Trump era, right?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Although he's certainly gone along with much of the president's agenda and has certainly been an ally. But yeah, now faces some primary challengers and is headed to a runoff.
Yeah, so he got 41.8% of the vote. And then his main challenger was Paxton, who's the current attorney general. Paxton's a little different of a character. I guess you could characterize him as a little bit more MAGA. I recently watched an interview with him where he touted how many lawsuits that he had brought against Biden. And so I would say his personality is very large. And I see him kind of like a Trump persona, not afraid to go with lawfare, not a little big chested, a lot of ego going there for that guy. And he ended up with 40.8% of the vote. So we're split by like 1%. And then the third challenger was Hunt, who's a current U.S. representative. He got 13.5% of the vote. I think a lot of people knew coming in he wasn't as serious of a contender. But I am curious as to why you think he didn't drop out. I see this as like a Sliwa situation in New York City, right? As to like, man, you're not going to win, but you're going to take enough away from somebody else that's going to make a difference, which is clear with only 1% difference between Cornyn and Paxton.
Yeah, I mean it's unclear so much as that we didn't know who was going to make that runoff. And you're correct. There maybe is some or was some Cornyn fatigue. Paxton, as you said, was a little more bombastic, a little more. You said MAGA. I'm not sure. Again, Cornyn has strong conservative bona fides, but Paxton also has a lot of baggage. And there was a notion of Wesley Hunt could have easily made, or maybe not, could have made the runoff. And if it was a Paxton versus Hunt, that maybe the endorsement would go Hunt's way. So it's always a notion of personal ambition and with a fluid and kind of weird dynamic, kind of a why not? I think, had the president weighed in earlier, that probably would have solidified things and maybe made it so we didn't have to do this Texas two-step of now going to a runoff, which could be incredibly expensive. And we'll see, what the outcome is. So yeah, action remains on the Republican side here.
Yeah. So when you think about who Hunt was as a candidate and what his kind of platform stood for, do you see that 13.5% share going more towards Cornyn or Paxton?
I think it will go towards wherever the president tells it to go. Donald Trump, his endorsement, which could be forthcoming, will be key. It sounds like he'll be going towards John Cornyn, probably for two major reasons. One is that this race is now competitive. Tallarico won. This could be a very competitive general election. You go with the horse that brought you. John Cornyn is known as the incumbent. Odds are has a better chance than Ken Paxton, who again has more baggage than a 747. So I think that the president might say it's a little too risky. If you remember way back when in 2018, there was the Roy Moore roll the dice in Alabama. That didn't work out well. We've had Herschel Walker endorsements, Dr. Oz endorsements that, seats that we should have won that didn't work out. So I think the president might be going with Cornyn. And then you have the consultant class. A lot of the former Trump consultants are lined up with Cornyn, and a lot of the former DeSantis guys, Axiom rather, are with Paxton. and there tends to be some tribal bad blood there. So I think those two factors sounds like a Cornyn endorsement could be happening. I think that will be enough. The question, like you just said, Nicole, does Paxton drop out? Who knows? Time will tell. But really, as a Republican, wish we weren't even going down this path of waiting for the president to weigh in.
Seriously, because here we go. We got a new post from our wonderful president saying that uh, the state that he's won in record numbers, the Senate race, they both ran a good race, but essentially he's going to come out with an endorsement. And he kind of telegraphs that his expectation is that whoever he doesn't endorse will drop out and we don't even have to go down this runoff road, right? Which would be really interesting. And I think about the personalities that would be required to drop out without the endorsement. And I wonder how controversial that would actually be. Now, I think that obviously our president is a very powerful man, and anything that he says will probably be followed. But it is an interesting thought because then we have the Democratic race, right? And
And just on that, like you said, I'm endorsing this candidate. I expect you to drop out. There's always been talk of, the off ramp for Paxton. Could Paxton go to DOJ? Is Pam Bondi on in ICE? Is there a role there? So there's always been talk. Of course, you have Senate confirmation for him, which could be rough. But yeah, sometimes you use the carrots,
yeah,
sometimes you use the stick.
there's a little deal with a sweeten the pot aspect, right?
Could be. You never know.
And
You
you
never know.
never know. Okay,
Stranger things have happened in this town.
fair enough. Well, and so I think that, just a few things that I want to point out is that, the total Republican votes on this were, 2.15 million. Okay. So just keep that in your back pocket because now we're going to talk about the Democratic primary, which was basically between Tallarico and Crockett. I think that I heard a lot of people initially thinking that Crockett was going to take it, but Tallarico smoked her. He
Yeah.
finished with 52.9% of the vote, and she only got 45.7,
Yeah.
which again, as a Republican, I probably would have preferred to see Jasmine Crockett in the general against whatever our outcome candidate was. And the fact that there was this little I mean, I look back to the Colbert situation, right? He got this interview with Colbert. They said they couldn't air it because Trump's FCC said no, 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 but it was really equal time with them not sharing with Jasmine Crockett, right? But he was able to brand himself as a victim of Trump and Trump's administration, uh, put together this good marketing scheme to get himself 25 mil in the bank account and donations. And all of a sudden, whoop, switch him out. Now, I think this guy is an interesting candidate here because he is a Bible quoting white man. Okay.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and despite still having interesting policies for, someone claiming they're a Bible follower as far as like trans, women in women's sports and some other more liberal views that he's kind of expressed. And I can't help but see this guy as like a Spanberger type, right? Runs a moderate
Well, don't
campaign.
say that because Spamberger won.
Well, but that's my point. She won on a moderate campaign, and then she came out like a typical Dem and slapped 10% taxes on, everyday expenses. And there's a lot of less moderate things happening in Virginia at the moment. And it is a bait and switch, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, there's a lot there. Totally. There's
I
a whole
also,
dynamic at
yeah.
play.
I don't think that we have had enough Oppo research on this guy yet either, because he's also got a little, being a single man. I think that there are some things that have come up in the past about him being in contact with like some OnlyFans models and just some other things where, I mean, like, boys like boobies, I get it. But I think that, you gotta split it. You gotta see who the person really is. And I don't know if we've had that opportunity yet.
Listen, you're right on everything you said. He ran a traditional campaign, raised money, like you said. The Colbert bump that he got and the media coverage was incredibly helpful. He raised like $2 million. Whether or not that was, either a Schumer move to elevate him over Crockett or some sort of a Trump FCC interference that backfired, who's to say? I know we both have our own ideas and debated that last night here in DC. But yeah, I think the notion was this is a better candidate and campaign. Jasmine Crockett didn't really raise money, didn't really campaign in the traditional ways. For a long time, had some media fascination, was a lightning rod, but certainly came up short. Now, yes, he'll be going into a general election with a long runway here to raise money. Um, what happens, we don't know. I'm skeptical that, I think the American public, the longer we evolve, the less the personal aspects matter. Um, and I do think it is going to be, continue to be about the issues at hand, the ideas at play. You're right, he is a unique candidate. Dems seem to appreciate him as, what did you say, a Bible quoting lib? What do Republicans joke? He's their white Christian nationalist or something. That is somehow acceptable. But we've seen this before in Texas. Wendy Long was going to be this media darling and take over. Of course, Beto O'Rourke. Texas remained Republican. I think most Republicans think even if Paxton were to somehow make it to a general, that they think he would ultimately win, although it may be quite expensive. But like you said, look at that voter enthusiasm. Dems will crawl over glass right now to vote. I'm not sure the Republican Party feels the same way. And now we have, the economy, international affairs. You know, it's worrisome. And if you're looking at Senate control, boy, it would be nice if the GOP was in a position to take Texas off the map. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case.
Well, and what a nightmare, my friends, because listen, their total voters in the primary was 2.3, and I told you to put that other number in your back pocket, which was 2.15. Man, if the same amount of voters that came out for the primary come out in the general, we're going to get smoked just by pure numbers of votes, which is
Uh,
terrifying in Texas.
yeah, listen, if Texas goes, that means a lot. That means that the blue wave high water mark is going to be significant. That means
Yikes.
if Texas goes, so probably does the Senate itself. So yeah, all interesting points. Enthusiasm is an indicator. It is not necessarily determinative at this point. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this Texas race, lives another day.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for chatting with me about it, Matthew. I've got my eyes on this because, listen, we were prepared to maybe lose the House, but if we start walking down this road starting in Texas about losing Senate seats, we're like we were sweating, but man, we better grab a towel because it's going to be rough.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, this is just if Texas is in play, Democrats, all they need to do is grab a surfboard and ride this wave, and it's going to be big. So you never say never in American politics, but this is going to be a lot of money and a lot of attention. Um, Either way, no matter what happens.
Yeah. Well, let's just pray that our president endorses a candidate whose opposition is willing to drop out with an exit ramp, and the people will show up for a general in greater numbers than they showed up for the primary. Thanks,
Well,
Matthew. It was
Texas
great having
Texas
you.
history goes that way, so we'll see if it continues.
Fingers crossed. We'll see
Fingers
you again
crossed.
soon.
Always a pleasure.